So in class number 2, we're going to cover compression and expansion basics. So this we're going to get into more of the practical application of dynamics. We're going to take a look at downward compression techniques, downward expansion techniques. And as I said before in the class 1, this will just get into all of the just real simple practical uses for compression, in a mix. So downward compression, again, is the most popular, and this will be scattered across all of the rest of the course. Downward expansion, not as much, because gating is a fairly simple process. You can get some real basic lessons and learn some tricks about expansion, downward expansion in terms of gating in a relatively pretty short period of time. It's not that conceptually deep, and it's pretty easy to hear because you're basically shutting something off. Whereas compression is a little bit harder to hear because the signal is still there, and the movement sometimes is so rapid that you may not even really hear it or perceive it. And that's really important, so we want to get, over the course of this course and these individual classes, you will, your ear will become tuned in to what these different techniques are and how they're worked. So we'll open up a little session here, and I'll just kind of show you a couple things. Upward compression is, or like upward, expansion and upward compression. Upward compression is low-level compression. So this is the way of adding presence or bringing energy into a sound, or detail or focus into a sound. And upward expansion is the process of expanding or moving signals upward relative to their original dynamics. So I'm not even sure where to start here. Let's just kind of pick something out here. So let's just say that I have something simple as a kick and a snare. And what I'll do here is I'll take these two processors here, and what I have here is just, let me just make sure that's the kick and that's the snare. Okay, so if we listen to this, and we have a little bit of reverb in there somewhere. Guess that's hidden. That's all right. We can deal with that. So what we have here is we have something with a fast attack and what amounts to basically like an eighth note release time. Okay. Now, just to give you an idea of how this works, so the threshold is set here, 2-to-1 ratio, more or less. A little bit of makeup gain, which should reflect how much is there. Just to give you an idea of this and what this is doing, let's just kind of take, so this is a downward compression, a simple downward compression technique. So that's without it. So you can hear how much more alive it sounds. So why does it sound alive? What am I really doing here? I'm barely tweaking the gain reduction. This is not like a big deal here. It's like you could say, oh, maybe I'm over exaggerating the makeup gain, and I could pull this down here and it would still sound more dynamic. So what we're hearing and what we're feeling is a sense of movement, a sense of depth to it. So in other words, if something is staying, is stationary in a particular position, you don't take notice of it. Our brain is tuned to changes in things, differences in things, not sameness. So there's actual sameness, like you paint a wall white, and it's just white. It's never going to change. It's just there. It will yellow over the course of 30 years, but it's basically white. It's not changing. And then there is something that is a little bit more relative. So you have a person who's standing on the other side of the room, and they're moving a little bit, but the amount of their movement and their behavior and their changing is not enough to draw interest. But if that same person starts just flipping out, throwing their arms all over the place, doing backflips across the room, and all kinds of crazy things, then it's whoa, and you want to check it out. It's what's this guy doing? He's losing it. And you pay attention right away because something unusual and something dramatic is happening. Okay, and there's some movement there. So if you have, for example, in that same situation, you have a person who is coming towards you. You will take notice of the fact that they're coming towards you. As they go away, you'll take notice that they're going away. And this is kind of what we're really doing with the dynamic here, but we're really doing it in a musical way. So that sense of presence that you feel, okay, it's not it sounds like it's more high frequencies, like there's more energy in there. It's movement. It's just simple movement. That's all we're doing. And there are a couple ways that I can affect this. So for example, here I can take this here, and if I just kind of switch this setting over, I can slow down the attack. So I can allow more of the transient signal to pop through. And if I do this and I slow it down here, I'll try to keep them, pretty close to the same. Then all of a sudden, now we have a little bit more punchiness. And this is the other way. More distant. So here, now we're really playing with a lot of how something is controlled. So this is a really cool thing. We're going to get more into this a bit, but just to kind of show you like the front-back positioning and how like a downward compression thing can be kind of used. It could also be used in a very different way, like on a bass or something like that, where we have a slower release time. Here we have like a quarter note release time. I think that's a quarter note release time, and maybe the other was an eighth note. I think I may have said 16th note. Yeah, I think I said eighth. Right, so what you see here, a slower attack and a longer release time. This is creating a smoothness. And the attack here, the slow attack, is allowing the transient to kind of come through a little bit more. So it's evening out the sustain of the note. So there, the attack almost sounds separated from the actual note. Now they sound a little bit more focused and pulled together. And just that subtle pumping and movement in there helps to create a dynamic that pulls the sound together, right? So this is just like some simple compression. We can also take, for example, if we were kind of working with our kick and snare things here and we were playing with this, we could also work from a simple expansion type of idea. So let me just go with a fast attack and let me invert the ratio here and kind of make it so now it's pumping the signal upward during this time. And in which case, what I would be doing is I would be having make down gain because I'll be adding gain. So instead of make up gain, we will be adjusting it downward. So what I'm doing here is I'm pumping up the attack, right? It's sort of an inverse of what I was doing before. And it has a very different feel to it. This is the downward. And this is much more familiar sounding. Oh, I think I inverted these somehow. And I can change the release characteristics, the release time, attack, all those sorts of things to bring out different aspects of the sound. So really what I'm doing is I'm controlling the ADSR cycle, okay? And it's that simple. Gating would be downward expansion. So that is just like a simple, like, okay, when the signal goes, and I could just kind of do it very quickly. Here, let's go dynamics. Let's just do just like one of these guys. So I have a hold control, right, for the amount. I have an attack control. Maybe I want to make this really fast. I have a release time setting. I have a range, which is how far down it goes. And then I'll set my threshold. And I can control how long the sustain is. Right, so if I do that too long, I can start to hear the hi-hat bleeding in. And I can just very simply just shape the sound of my snare drum. Okay, now if he's doing any other low-level stuff in there, like little skippy, type of things with the sticks, just like some kind of playing around with some different things in between the beats, which I think happens somewhere in the song, then that would be a problem. But this is just simple, right? It's just fast attack, set my hold and release to musical time, set how much I want to clamp it down, and what that does is it actually helps in many ways with the reverb, right? Right, you get a nice clean reverb. In here, you're getting so much hi-hat bleed, it's actually part of the drum sound. So now we have to, go ahead and dig out the hi-hat somewhere. Right? So that's a simple, downward expansion. Another way to kind of take this whole thing and bring up presence is to do like a low-level compressor, right? So this is an upward compressor. And something simple here, like I'll just do like this. So this is like, there are not a lot of low-level compressors. Waves has two of them that are very good, Max Volume and MV2. MV2 is like a light version, so it has actually a peak limiter, or what they call a high-level compression and a low-level compression. And this is just like bringing up low-level energy. So when signal passes below a certain threshold, that gain, or the signal passes below there, is pushed upward, and you can see this upward compression. So we're adding like 6 dB of extra gain in there. And that's just a real simple way to add presence to something, right? Usually what happens in the low-level energy spectrum, and this is something we'll get into in detail, but just very quickly, just to kind of show you what happens to a signal over time, is that we have a full range of dynamic. And let's just say it's 120 dB, because that's our range of hearing, more or less, on the SPL level, okay? But that's basically reflected in the dBFS scale. So if we have the highest level signal is the peak signal, and then we have an average signal, which occurs over the next thing. So maybe that's our snare drum. That's probably not exactly what it would look like, but whatever. Now, when we get past this, though, the high frequency information is mostly built into the transient, not into the sustain. And this here is more low and mid-range information, low frequency information, low and mid-frequency information. So this is more the sustained signal. So if this was a bass, that would be the pick hitting the string or the finger hitting the string, and this would be all the low resonance, the tone of the actual instrument. And so what happens is that if you go over the time scale and you look at high frequencies shoot up dramatically and then drop off dramatically and are mostly here in the low-level information. Whereas the low and mid frequencies sort of start off low and then they come up higher and then last through the sustain of the note. So that's part of what's going on. So when we go to low-level compression, what we're really doing is we're taking this high-frequency presence energy that gives us the detail, and we're pulling it up closer to the sustain signal. And that's basically what it is. So it's really, so the upward compression is a really, really powerful tool. And there are definitely ways to overuse it, because if you just sort of force presence into everything like that, then you end up with a big mess. But it's amazing, because when you learn to use these tools, you can hear just from these small examples where I didn't really do much in terms of gain reduction or in terms of dynamic processing, how much presence and brightness was added in. And the additive EQ almost becomes sort of now an addition to the dynamics processor. So you're really able to control lots of the different characteristics of the sound throughout all this. All right, so that's our Class 2 preview. Let's move on to Class 3.